Okay, we are now in the nervous system, and usually the nervous system is one of those topics that are usually being reserved on the last topics. But I know the importance of the nervous system, especially when you go to other subjects, like especially in your higher subjects, like in physiology and in your, particularly in your pharmacology, because the first topics that we're going to discuss later on in your pharmacology is actually drugs that act on the nervous system. So I'm going to get rid of my face. I'll just be talking. So this is basically the neuron, which happens to be the nerve cell. So unlike your typical cell, the neuron has this morphology, or this is how it looks like. Now, before we go to the neuron itself, we have to discuss also what is the function of the nervous system. And the nervous system is the one that receives stimuli from the external and internal environment. They also analyze and integrate these stimuli, and they bring about the necessary response to the stimuli. For example, if you're able to touch something hot or sharp, your response is automatically you have to pull your hand away from that object. The nervous system is divided into two subsystems. The first subsystem is the central nervous system, which comprises the brain and the spinal cord. And we have the peripheral nervous system, which includes your cranial nerves, spinal nerves, autonomic nervous system, which is divided further into sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic nerves. And then we have the somatic nervous system. Now, the neuron is the main cell of the nervous system that transmits nerve impulses. It's a complex nerve tissue, such as the brain and spinal cord is made up of neurons that is supported by connective tissue. As in the case of the brain, it is actually connected with fat. Neuroglial cells supplies nutrients and carry waste materials away from the neurons. Now we go to the parts of the neuron. So we have the cell body, which contains the nucleus. And then we have the dendrons and dendrites. So dendrons are short processes that are formed by many finer dendrites. And these carry nerve impulses towards cell body. This is from Aspinall and O'Reilly. This is a neuronal body that can receive as much as 6,000 dendrons and from other neurons. We also have the axon. So this is a long process that carries nerve impulses away from the cell body, and axon hillock is a point where the axon leaves the neuron. Then we have the synapse. So this is the terminal structure of each axon, and it has the neuromuscular junction, which is a synapse that is found in the muscle fiber. The button-like presynaptic endings have vesicles that contain chemical transmitters, and this is what you call it neurotransmitters. And acetylcholine is the most common one. We have other neurotransmitters such as adrenaline, serotonin, and dopamine. So this is your typical neuron. So you have there the nucleus, this is the cell body, and these are the dendrites. So the dendrites will be the one that receives stimuli from other neurons. And this is the axon. And this is the terminal part of the axon. Take note of these, the node of Ranvier, the myelin sheath, and the Schwann cells, which we'll discuss a bit later in this next slides. Now, the speed of transmission of nerve impulses along the axon is increased by the presence of the myelin sheath. The Schwann cells, these are lipoprotein materials that make up the myelin sheath, and this makes the nerves appear white. So when you check out our videos on the muscles of our dogs that we dissected, you can see something white in there, particularly when we're going to have the muscles on the hind legs. You can see something white, so that is the one that's a nerve. Also, they found in the white matter of the central nervous system. Nodes of Ranvier. So these spaces are found interrupting the myelin sheath, and this is where the axonal tissue receives nutrients and oxygen supply. Non-myelinated there are what we call non-myelinated fibers. So these are embedded within the Schwann cells. However, non-myelinated fibers are actually covered by a single layer of myelin. Totally uncovered nerve fibers are quite rare, but they can only be found in the cornea of the eye, which is one of the clear parts of the eye. So this is the Schwann cells. This is the myelin. And then this is the axon, and you have the neurofibrils. So this is how the nerves looks like. So this is a electronic microscopic vision of a nerve. So it has a lot of, so you have the dendritic spine, you have the neuronal body, then you have here. Classification of nerves. So nerves can be classified. For the peripheral nerves, they can be classified as sensory nerves, so they carry impulses towards the central nervous system. We also have the motor nerves, which carry impulses away from the central nervous system. And we have the mixed nerves, which carry both sensory and motor fibers. Later on, we're going to have the cranial nerves even. You will identify them if what type of nerve they are. Are they sensory? Are they motor? Or are they mixed? We also have the intercalated nerves. They're classified as afferent nerves, which carry impulses toward a structure, usually in the CNS. And the efferent nerves carry impulses away from a structure, usually in the CNS. So when you say CNS, central nervous system. Nerve fibers may further be classified according to the organ with which they are associated. So when you say visceral nerves, these are associated with the visceral organs, so the internal organs. And they stimuli are carried by visceral sensory nerves from blood vessels, mucous membranes, and visceral organs to the central nervous system. Impulses are transmitted from the CNS by the visceral motor nerves to smooth muscles and glandular tissues where they initiate a response. Somatic nerves, associated with somatic organs like the skeletal muscles. So stimuli is carried by the somatic sensory nerves towards the CNS, and the nerve impulses are carried by somatic motor nerves to skeletal muscles where they initiate a response. So that's the introduction for your nervous system. Next, we're going to talk about the brain. So it's going to be a long one. So take care, you guys, and I'll see you on the next slide.